Did you know that James Garner and Lois Clark got married just 14 days after meeting, and their love lasted an incredible 58 years? From Paul Newman's secret to staying faithful in Hollywood to John Wayne's Peruvian love story, these legendary couples will blow your mind. Here are the 20 longest-lasting Hollywood marriages you might not recognize today. 1. James Garner and Lois Clark. James Garner and Lois Clark had one of Hollywood's longest-lasting and most beautiful love stories. They were married for an incredible 58 years, which is almost unheard of, especially in the world of fame and showbiz. They first met at a party in 1956, and the story goes that James Garner fell head over heels for Lois right away. In fact, they got married just 14 days after meeting each other. Can you believe that? It sounds like a whirlwind romance straight out of a movie, but it worked for them. Garner often joked that it was love at first sight, and it seems like he was right. Their marriage, like any other, had its ups and downs. They faced challenges along the way, but they always found a way to work through them. Garner was open about the fact that their relationship wasn't always easy, but he was fiercely devoted to Lois. In interviews, he talked about how much he adored her, describing Lois as his soulmate. He credited their long-lasting marriage to their willingness to give each other space and respect each other's differences. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about understanding, patience, and love. Throughout their life together, Lois supported Garner through his career, which spanned several decades. He became a big name in Hollywood, known for his roles in The Rockford Files and Maverick, but he always put his family first. In his autobiography, Garner shared that no matter how busy or successful he became, Lois and their family remained his top priority. When James Garner passed away in 2014, Lois was by his side, just as she had been for nearly 6 decades. 2. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward had one of the most iconic marriages in Hollywood, lasting 50 years until Paul Newman's passing in 2008. They first met in 1953 while working on a Broadway play, but it wasn't until a few years later, after Paul's divorce from his first wife, that they began their romantic relationship. In 1958, they got married, and from then on, they were inseparable. People often wondered what made their marriage work so well, especially in an industry full of temptations and pressure. Both Paul and Joanne often said that one of the keys to their long-lasting relationship was privacy. They didn't let the public or the media get involved in their personal lives, and they kept their family life separate from the Hollywood spotlight as much as possible. Another thing that helped their marriage thrive was the fact that they supported each other's careers. Both of them were incredibly talented actors, but there was never a sense of competition between them. Paul was known for saying things like, "Why go out for a hamburger when you have steak at home?" when people asked about how they managed to stay faithful to each other in Hollywood. It showed how much he adored Joanne and how strong their bond was. When Paul Newman passed away in 2008, it was clear how much Joanne meant to him, right up until the end. 3. Fred Astaire and Phyllis Livingston Potter. Fred Astaire and Phyllis Livingston Potter shared a truly special love story, lasting 35 years until Phyllis's death in 1954. Fred Astaire, who was famous for his incredible dancing and acting, was deeply devoted to Phyllis, and their bond was something that grounded him throughout his career. Fred and Phyllis met in the early 1930s, and Fred fell hard for her. She wasn't from the world of Hollywood, in fact, she was a socialite, which made their relationship even more unique. They got married in 1933, and from that moment on, Fred was not just focused on his career but also on being a loving husband and father to Phyllis and her son from a previous marriage. He often said that Phyllis was his anchor, and her love helped him stay humble despite all his fame. Their life together wasn't filled with the typical glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Fred preferred a quiet, private life with Phyllis, away from the public eye. They spent most of their time at home, and Fred was dedicated to making their marriage work despite the challenges that came with his busy career. When Phyllis fell ill, Fred was by her side, supporting her through her sickness. When Phyllis passed away in 1954, Fred was heartbroken. He never really got over losing her, and throughout the rest of his life, he continued to honor her memory. 4. Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee. Stay tuned to learn more about Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee, along with other legendary couples whose love stories defied the odds. Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee's marriage was one filled with love, but it also had its fair share of challenges. They were married for 20 years, from 1930 until Dixie's death in 1952. Dixie Lee was a talented actress and singer in her own right when she married Bing Crosby. In fact, she was even more famous than him when they first got together. However, once they married, Dixie stepped back from her career to focus on their family. They had 4 sons together, and Dixie dedicated most of her time to raising them while Bing's career skyrocketed. Bing became one of the biggest stars of his time, known for his smooth voice and hit songs like White Christmas. While their love was undeniable, their marriage wasn't without difficulties. Bing's busy schedule, combined with the pressures of Hollywood life, put a strain on their relationship at times. There were also reports that Dixie struggled with alcoholism, which made things harder for both of them. However, Bing and Dixie remained committed to each other through it all. They were deeply connected, and Bing often spoke about how much he admired Dixie for her strength and how much she meant to him. When Dixie passed away in 1952 from ovarian cancer, Bing was devastated. He lost not just his wife, but also the mother of his children and the person who had been by his side through some of the most important moments of his life. After her death, Bing often talked about Dixie with great love, saying how much he respected her and how grateful he was for the time they had together. 5. Danny Thomas and Rosemarie Mantell Thomas. Danny Thomas and Rosemarie Mantell Thomas had an incredible marriage that lasted 55 years until Danny's death in 1991, which is pretty amazing by any standard, especially in Hollywood. Danny Thomas, as you probably know, was a well-loved comedian and actor, but he also founded St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which became one of his biggest legacies. Throughout his career, from his early days trying to make a name for himself to becoming a household name, Rosemarie was always there by his side. What's really special about their relationship is that it wasn't just about Danny's career. Rosemarie had been a singer and actress herself before they got married, so she understood the entertainment world. But once they got together, she took a step back from her own career to focus on their family and to support Danny in his dreams. They raised 3 children together, including their famous daughter Marlo Thomas. Even though Danny was constantly in the spotlight, their marriage stayed strong because they kept their personal life grounded. They had a lot of love and respect for each other, and they made sure to keep their family life as normal as possible despite the fame and Hollywood chaos. In interviews, Danny often talked about how lucky he was to have Rosemarie by his side, saying that she was the reason he was able to achieve everything he did. 6. Bob and Dolores Hope. Bob and Dolores Hope had one of the longest marriages in Hollywood, lasting almost 69 years. It's pretty rare to hear of a relationship that stands the test of time like that. Bob Hope was, of course, one of the biggest comedians and entertainers in the world. He was known for his quick wit, countless USO tours to entertain the troops, and starring in classic movies. But behind all of that success was Dolores, his wife and rock. Bob often said that he wouldn't have achieved everything he did without her by his side. Their love story began in 1934. And from the moment they got married, they were inseparable. Dolores, a singer herself, understood the world of entertainment, but she chose to step back from the spotlight to focus on their family and support Bob. Even though Bob spent a lot of time traveling and performing, their relationship stayed strong. Dolores was the quiet, steady force that kept their home life grounded. They adopted 4 children and built a close-knit family that was the center of their lives. When Bob passed away in 2003 at the age of 100, Dolores continued to honor his memory, and their love story remained one of the longest and most cherished in Hollywood. 7. Carl Reiner and Estelle LaBoste. Stay tuned to learn about the incredible love story of Carl Reiner and Estelle LaBoste, another Hollywood couple whose relationship defied the odds. Carl Reiner and Estelle LaBoste shared one of those truly special marriages that lasted for an incredible 64 years, right up until Estelle's death in 2008. They met in 1943, and it was love at first sight for Carl. He knew right away that Estelle was the one for him, and they got married soon after. Estelle wasn't from the world of Hollywood, she was an artist, and they balanced each other out beautifully. Even though Carl's career took him into the spotlight, he always credited Estelle for being the heart of their family. Humor was a big part of their relationship. Carl was known for making people laugh on screen, but he often said that the best laughs were the ones he shared with Estelle. They knew how to keep things light even during tough times. Carl would joke that Estelle was his toughest critic and best audience all at once. She had a great sense of humor, and their shared laughter helped them navigate life's ups and downs. Their marriage wasn't just about humor, though. They also had a deep respect for each other's individuality and talent. Estelle supported Carl's career while also pursuing her own passions, and Carl always spoke about her with the utmost respect and admiration. 8. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee were one of Hollywood's most beloved power couples, married for an amazing 57 years until Ossie's passing in 2005. They met in 1946 when they were cast in a play together, and their chemistry was undeniable. By 1948, they were married and became an unstoppable team. Throughout their careers, Ossie and Ruby collaborated on many acting projects, appearing together in films, TV shows, and plays. They were both incredibly talented actors, and their work together only deepened their connection. Some of their most famous collaborations were in movies like Do the Right Thing and Jungle Fever, and their performances were always powerful and full of emotion. But what really set Ossie and Ruby apart as a couple was their commitment to social justice. They were both heavily involved in the civil rights movement, working alongside leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. They used their platform as actors to speak out against racial inequality and fight for change. It wasn't just a side project for them, it was a central part of who they were as a couple. Their activism brought them even closer, and they inspired each other to keep pushing for a better world. In interviews, they often talked about how they made their marriage work for so many years. One thing they credited was communication. They were always open and honest with each other, even about the tough stuff. 9. Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronyn. Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronyn had one of the most enduring marriages in Hollywood, lasting for 52 years until Jessica's death in 1994. Jessica and Hume met in 1940 while working on Broadway. At the time, Jessica was already a well-known actress, and Hume was just starting his acting career. They quickly fell in love, and it didn't take long for them to get married. From that point on, their lives and careers were intertwined, and they became one of the most beloved acting duos in Hollywood and on Broadway. Throughout their 52 years together, they often worked side by side, starring in plays and films together. Some of their most famous collaborations included The Gin Game and Foxfy, where their on-screen chemistry was as strong as their real-life connection. You could tell they truly enjoyed acting together, and they brought out the best in each other. Their shared love for the craft helped them form a deep bond that lasted through the decades. But it wasn't just their work that made their relationship special. They had a deep personal connection built on love, respect, and mutual admiration. Hume often said that Jessica's talent and intelligence inspired him, while Jessica admired Hume's creativity and dedication. They supported each other through thick and thin, both in their careers and in life. 10. Charlton and Lydia Heston. Charlton and Lydia Heston's marriage was a shining example of enduring love, lasting an incredible 64 years until Charlton's passing in 2008. Charlton, famous for his roles in epic films like Ben Hur and the Ten Commandments, met Lydia in the 1940s when they were both attending Northwestern University. They fell in love, got married in 1944, and spent the next 6 decades building a life together. One of the things Charlton and Lydia both emphasized was the importance of talking things through. They believed that open communication was the foundation of their relationship. They didn't shy away from difficult conversations and were always willing to listen to each other, even when they didn't see eye to eye. This allowed them to work through challenges together instead of letting things build up. Charlton once said that when you're married that long, it's not about avoiding arguments, but about being able to resolve them with respect. Charlton deeply respected Lydia, not only as his wife but also as an intelligent and strong partner. Lydia, in turn, supported Charlton's career and was his biggest cheerleader. But it was never a one-sided relationship. Charlton often spoke about how much he valued Lydia's opinions. Even in the later years of their marriage, after Charlton was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, Lydia was by his side, taking care of him until the very end. 11. Sidney Poitier and Joanna Shimkus. Stay tuned to discover the love story of Sidney Poitier and Joanna Shimkus, another iconic Hollywood couple whose bond defied the odds. Sidney Poitier and Joanna Shimkus have one of those rare and beautiful Hollywood love stories that lasted for over 45 years until Sidney's death in 2022. Sidney and Joanna first met in the late 1960s while working together on a film, and they instantly connected. By 1976, they were married, and they had been together ever since. What's truly special about their relationship is the way they've supported each other both personally and professionally. Sidney had a groundbreaking career, winning an Oscar and becoming a trailblazer for African-American actors in Hollywood, but through all the fame, Joanna was his constant source of support and encouragement. Together, they had 2 daughters, and family life was always a priority for both of them. One of the things Sidney often talked about was how much he admired Joanna's strength, kindness, and unwavering support. He mentioned in interviews how she had been a grounding force in his life, always offering him love and stability, even during the toughest times in his career. Their marriage was a true partnership where they both respected and lifted each other up. 12. Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft had one of the most beloved and long-lasting marriages in Hollywood, staying together for 41 years until Anne's passing in 2005. They first met in 1961. And the story of how it happened is pretty charming. Anne was rehearsing for a TV show, and Mel spotted her from across the room. He immediately knew she was special and approached her. According to Mel, he went right up to her and said, "I'm Mel Brooks," to which she responded, "So what?" Even though Anne wasn't easily impressed, they hit it off, and the two were inseparable from then on. They got married in 1964, and their love story was truly one of the sweetest in Hollywood. What made their relationship so strong was how they complemented each other perfectly. Anne Bancroft was an incredible actress, known for her iconic roles in films like The Miracle Worker and The Graduate, and Mel Brooks was a comedic genius, famous for movies like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Despite their busy and very successful careers, they always made time for each other and kept their personal lives private. One of the most beautiful things about their marriage was how much they made each other laugh. Mel always said that humor was a big part of their bond. They loved being around each other and constantly kept things light and fun. And even said once that marrying Mel was the best thing she ever did because he made her life so full of joy. 13. Henry Fonda and Shirley Mae Adams. Henry Fonda and Shirley Mae Adams had a quiet but deeply meaningful marriage that lasted 17 years, from 1965 until Henry's death in 1982. By the time Henry met Shirley, he was already an established Hollywood star, known for his iconic roles in films like The Grapes of Wrath and 12 Angry Men, but his personal life had been a bit rocky up until that point. He had gone through several marriages, some of which ended in heartbreak and tension. So when he married Shirley Mae Adams, it seemed like he finally found someone who brought calm and comfort to his life. Shirley, a former model and flight attendant, wasn't part of the Hollywood scene, which may have been exactly what Henry needed. She offered him a quieter, more grounded life away from the spotlight. They moved to a ranch in Bel Air, California, where they could enjoy their time together in a more private setting. While Henry was still working in films, it was clear that Shirley provided him with the emotional support he needed to slow down and enjoy life outside of his career. One thing people often noted about their relationship was how devoted Shirley was to Henry. In his later years, when Henry's health started to decline, she was by his side every step of the way, taking care of him and making sure he was comfortable. Henry suffered from heart disease, and when he passed away in 1982 at the age of 77, Shirley was with him. 14. Spencer Tracy and Louise Treadwell. Spencer Tracy and Louise Treadwell's marriage is one of the more complex and fascinating stories from Hollywood's golden age. They were married for 44 years, from 1923 until Spencer's death in 1967, but their relationship was far from typical. Although they remained legally married for all those years, they were separated for a long time, especially during Spencer's famous romance with Katharine Hepburn. Spencer and Louise met in the early 1920s, and they got married in 1923, right before Spencer's Hollywood career really took off. They had 2 children together, John and Susie, but their family faced some tough challenges early on. Their son John was born deaf, and this deeply affected both Spencer and Louise. Louise dedicated a lot of her time to help their son and later became a well-known advocate for children with hearing impairments, even founding an organization to support deaf children. While Louise was busy with their family and her advocacy work, Spencer's acting career started to skyrocket. He became one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, known for his roles in movies like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Judgment at Nuremberg. But along with the fame came personal struggles. Spencer was known to have problems with alcohol, and he had difficulty balancing his Hollywood lifestyle with his marriage. This led to the couple drifting apart, though they never divorced. During the 1940s, Spencer began a long-term relationship with actress Katharine Hepburn, which became one of Hollywood's most famous love affairs. Despite his relationship with Hepburn, Spencer never officially separated from Louise. Louise, on the other hand, chose to remain committed to the marriage, standing by him in her own way. Even though they were separated for many years, Louise was there for Spencer during his final days. 15. Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. Stay tuned to discover how the love story of Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan not only changed Hollywood but also shaped history. Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan's marriage was one of Hollywood and politics' most enduring love stories, lasting 52 years from 1952 until Ronald's passing in 2004. They met in 1949 when Nancy was a young actress in Hollywood. She had seen her name mistakenly listed on a communist blacklist and reached out to Ronald, who was president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time, for help. That initial meeting turned into a romance, and by 1952, they were married. From the very beginning, their bond was strong, and Nancy quickly became the most important person in Ronald's life. What made their marriage special was how devoted they were to each other. Ronald often called Nancy his Rock of Gibraltar because she was always there to support him no matter what. Their connection was clear to everyone around them, and they were known for being very affectionate, always holding hands or exchanging loving glances. It was obvious that they were each other's best friends. When Ronald transitioned from acting to politics, becoming governor of California and later president of the United States, Nancy was right by his side. She was his closest confidant and advisor, and they made major decisions together. Even though she was First Lady, she always focused on Ronald, making sure he had everything he needed to succeed. She once said, "My life didn't really begin until I met Ronnie," showing just how much he meant to her. Their love was tested when Ronald was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in the 1990s. Nancy became his primary caregiver, dedicating herself completely to his care. As his health declined, she stayed strong for him, even though it was incredibly hard for her to see the man she loved slip away. After Ronald passed away in 2004, Nancy continued to honor his legacy, always speaking about him with love and admiration. 16. Gary Cooper and Veronica Barth. Gary Cooper and Veronica Barth had a unique love story that spanned 23 years, from 1933 until his passing in 1961. Gary Cooper was one of the biggest movie stars of his time, known for his roles in classic films like High Noon and Sergeant York. Veronica Barth, also known as Rocky, came from a wealthy and prominent family and had a brief acting career herself. They met in the early 1930s and quickly fell in love. They got married in 1933, and their wedding was a big Hollywood event as Gary was already a major star by that point. Their marriage wasn't always easy, though. Being married to one of the most famous men in Hollywood came with challenges. Gary's career kept him busy, and he was often away filming, which put strain on their relationship. There were also rumors of infidelity on Gary's part, which caused some tension in their marriage. Despite this, Veronica remained devoted to him, and they worked through their issues to stay together. Toward the end of his life, Gary was diagnosed with cancer, and Veronica was by his side throughout his illness. Even though their marriage had its rough patches, she remained loyal and supportive, taking care of him in his final years. 17. Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart. Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart had one of the most legendary love stories in Hollywood, even though their time together was sadly cut short. They were married for 12 years, from 1945 until Bogart's death in 1957. In those years, they created a deep bond that's still remembered as one of Hollywood's greatest romances. Their love story began on the set of To Have and Have Not in 1944. Lauren, or Betty as Bogart affectionately called her, was just 19 years old and making her film debut, while Bogart was already an established star at 44. Despite their 25-year age difference, the chemistry between them was undeniable. On screen, they sizzled, and off-screen, their relationship blossomed quickly. Bogart was married at the time, but it was clear to everyone that he and Lauren had a special connection. Eventually, he left his wife, and he and Lauren were married in 1945. Their marriage was filled with love, laughter, and a strong partnership. Bogart often said that Lauren brought him happiness and peace like he'd never known before. One of the things people admired about their relationship was how real it was. Despite being two of the biggest stars in Hollywood, they managed to keep their life relatively private, enjoying simple things like sailing, spending time with their kids, and hosting intimate gatherings with close friends. Tragically, their time together was cut short when Bogart was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in the mid-1950s. Lauren was by his side throughout his illness, caring for him and supporting him through his battle. When he passed away in 1957 at the age of 57, Lauren was devastated, and she later said that Bogart was the love of her life. 18. Clark Gable and Kay Spreckles. Clark Gable and Kay Spreckles had a short but sweet love story, lasting just 6 years before Gable's untimely death in 1960. Before marrying Kay, Gable had been through multiple marriages, including his famous romance with Carole Lombard, who tragically died in a plane crash. That loss devastated him, and it took a long time for him to find love again. When he met Kay, she helped him heal. They married in 1955, and although they were together for only 6 years, it was a time filled with joy and companionship for both of them. Kay, a former model and actress, had been married a few times herself, but with Clark, she found a deep connection. Despite his tough guy image on screen, Gable was known to be more reserved and private in real life. Kay understood that and gave him the support and calm he needed. In 1960, their world was rocked when Gable suffered a heart attack shortly after wrapping up the film The Misfits with Marilyn Monroe. Kay was pregnant at the time, expecting their first child together. Sadly, Gable passed away before he could meet their son, John Clark Gable, who was born a few months later. Kay was heartbroken, but she always cherished the time they had together. 19. Myrna Lowy and Arthur Hornblow Jr. Myrna Lowy and Arthur Hornblow Jr. were married for 6 years, from 1936 to 1942, and during that time, they were one of Hollywood's most sophisticated couples. Their marriage began at the height of Myrna's career, which was booming in the late 1930s. She was one of the most beloved actresses of the time, known for playing elegant, smart, and often playful characters. Arthur, with his background in producing films, understood the pressures of Hollywood life, and their shared love for the industry was one of the things that brought them together. They were both incredibly talented in their own right, and for a time, it seemed like their relationship had a solid foundation. However, like many Hollywood marriages, their relationship faced its challenges. Myrna's career kept her busy, and Arthur's work as a producer often kept him occupied as well. Despite the glamour, the demands of their careers started to put a strain on their marriage. Myrna was also very politically active during this time, getting involved in efforts to support the war during World War II and serving on the board of the National Committee Against Nazi Persecution and Extermination of the Jews. While her work was important, it sometimes added to the distance between them. Her and Arthur, by the time their marriage ended in 1942, had grown apart, but they always remained respectful toward one another. Even after their divorce, neither of them spoke ill of the other, which is pretty rare for Hollywood splits. 20. John Wayne and Pilar Pallet. John Wayne and Pilar Pallet were married for 25 years, from 1954 to 1979, and their relationship was an interesting mix of Hollywood glamour and personal challenges. Their story began in 1953 when John Wayne was in Peru filming a movie. he met Pilar, who was an actress and also the daughter of a prominent Peruvian politician. Even though she was much younger than him, they quickly hit it off and developed a deep connection. They got married in 1954, and for Wayne, it was his third marriage. Despite his previous marriages not working out, there was something special about his bond with Pilar that kept them together for 25 years. Pilar brought a lot of energy and excitement into Wayne's life. She was charming, beautiful, and full of life, and she seemed to balance out his tough guy persona. However, their marriage wasn't without its difficulties. There were also reports of his heavy drinking and his infidelities, which Pilar struggled with over time. The distance and the stress took a toll on their marriage. By 1973, they separated, but they didn't officially divorce until 1979. Despite their separation, they remained close in many ways, and Pilar continued to speak fondly of Wayne after his death in 1979. She was there for him during his final years when he battled cancer, showing that their bond, though strained, was still strong in its own way. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Let us know in the comments which couple surprised you the most. See you in the next video.